Hello! Today I'll be discussing about the open strings of the guitar. When should we use them? When should we avoid them? In jazz playing, for example, open strings are pretty much forbidden, especially the first three strings, E, B, and G. Jazz guitarists usually rest their left hand around the fifth position of the instrument to play a single melodic line. However, in classical guitar, the open strings are a powerful asset. Composers that were also guitarists, like Villa-Lobos, Mauro Giuliani, Matteo Carcassi. In fact, one of Carcassi's etudes will be shown as an example, so we can see how the open strings can work to our benefit. Let's go on the guitar journey together. Open string notes are naturally louder, brighter, compared to fretted notes. Well, let's make a little experiment. Let's take the open E string here on the first string. So, this is how it sounds. Now, let's play the same note, this time fretted, here on the fifth position in the second string. Sounds different already, doesn't it? The second one is a lot darker compared to this one. Not to mention that if I want to control the sound of the second one, the second example, the fretted one, I can add some vibrato to it, so it will sound like this. Now let's take the same note and place it on the third string here on the G. Also sounds different, doesn't it? Finally, let's take the theme of a Bach fugue. And first I'm going to play it here on the third string, and it will be fretted. And then I'm going to play it starting on the first string. And I'm going to try to use as many open strings as possible. So here's the first one, fretted. Now, second time around. This time with the open string. It already sounds different. Everything sounds different, doesn't it? Harmonic passages that include open strings serve the purpose of building momentum. They serve as transition material, and they create different colors. An example of this would be the cadenza of the Villa-Lobos guitar concerto. Has a passage that goes like this. Essentially, I'm using the D string and the B string open at all times. I've got some kind of right hand arpeggio pattern going on here, and I'm moving around the fretboard easily. This is an example of how you can use the open strings to your benefit. Sometimes you have a melodic line that it's all fretted. So let's say something like this. You want to keep it that way. You do not want to use an open string just because you can use an open string. So maybe if you play it like this. It sounds out of context. It sounds like two different voices going on at the same time and not the same one. Even though technically it's all in the same range and it's the same note. When you have the chance, certain situations like this one, choose not to use the open strings. Here we have a passage of Carcassi's Etude number 1. This example shows how an open string can be used to transition from one position to another in the fingerboard of the guitar without breaking the melodic line. Look at measure 9. The line begins in first position, but in the second half of the measure, it indicates that the left hand should be in fifth position. Pay close attention to the E at the end of beat 2. It indicates that the guitarist must play that note open. Every time you see a little zero close by a certain note, it's telling you to not fret that note. Having that open note allows the guitarist to easily shift from one position to another without breaking a sweat. One of the goals of this etude is to help the student gain speed. So you should not worry about having a melodic line that pretty much only uses fretted notes, with the exception of that open E. The reason is, in a performance situation, the line will move by pretty fast, and as a result, it will be challenging for the listener to notice a difference in the sound. Next, I'll be performing that passage so you can see how it sounds. To clarify a few things, I'm going to play measure 9 now at the speed of no mistakes. And I'm going to freeze at the moment that I play the F. So be the downbeat of beat 3. One more time. Notice how as soon as I play the E at the end of beat 2, so I'm moving to the F. Coming up next, I will show you a passage from a Bach fugue transcription. In the following example, the passage avoids using open strings in order to maintain the melodic line within the same colors, something that we've discussed in the beginning of this lesson. Though this time, after looking at the given transcription, I will show another option of how the same passage can be played in the instrument using open strings to your benefit. Let's go check it out. Here we have example 2. I did not include any right hand digits because I want to focus on the open strings topic. In another video we can discuss some concepts of right hand digits and see how it connects to everything that we've been talking about. Pay attention to the numbers placed on top of the notes indicating how you should place your left hand in the fingerboard. Notice that there are no zeros this time. And this is a moment where you should pause the video and work around this fingering. We're dealing with a more advanced example. In Bach's music, there's always so much to pay attention to. Even though there's nothing telling you that you can't sneak an open string there, the 5th position sign on top of measure 8 makes it very clear that whoever wrote this transcription is avoiding open strings. Also, in the second half of measure 8, there is another sign telling you to move the 3rd position and remaining there until part of measure 9. Personally, I would play this passage differently, even though I understand why some guitarists may choose to play it this way. Switching from 5th position to 3rd position measure 8 is very tricky. Every time you make a bar chord, there's always tension involved. It is a controlled form of tension, but this is a long piece, part of a multi-movement work. You have to pace yourself in order to physically handle it. You don't want your fingers to be so exhausted that at the end of this work you cannot execute the movements using the best of your technique. In addition, this fugue is not a presto or an allegro, but it does require a certain level of speed proficiency. Again, in measure 8, to make a clean transition from 5th position to 3rd position, counting that the left hand is doing bars on both positions, it is totally doable. But it may take extra time to master clarity and also the speed. Next, I'm going to play the passage again at the speed of no mistakes, so pay close attention to it. Now we have a variation of the earlier example. This example shows the same passage using a different fingering that tries to give preference to the open strings. Notice the red arrows indicating some zeros. Once again, the zeros are telling you when to use the open E string. Not only the arrows specify the open E's, but more importantly, it shows when your left hand transitions from one position to another in the fingerboard of the guitar. This is the left hand fingering that I recommend for this passage. It avoids tension in the left hand. It is easier to move around the fingerboard to master clarity and speed. It is not breaking the melodic line. Right now, we're applying the Carcassi example to the current one. Next, I will play example 3, and you know it, at the speed of no mistakes. By any means, I'm not saying that example 2 is wrong and that example 3 is better. In guitar studies, in music, in life, there's always different ways to learn and introduce something. The purpose of this little lesson was to showcase the open strings and how you can use them to your benefit. The more you know about the technique of your instrument and how it functions, the better musician you become. You have more tools, you understand how composers, performers think. As a consequence, you start to make decisions for yourself. You don't want your applied teacher deciding the fingering of your pieces every lesson, even though sometimes it's necessary and important at some levels of study. My goal as a teacher is to nurture a critical thinking musician that will understand their technique and always seek for new ways to improve their playing. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me via email. Otherwise, thank you, stay playing, and I'll see you in another lecture. Ciao.